It's a people problem disguised as a data problem. And the
Mm.
numbers are only as good as the upstream behavior that we are promoting to get to those numbers.
Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Revenue Architects Podcast. This podcast is tailored to revenue leaders navigating the evolving landscape of sales, RevOps, and revenue management. Today, we have a wonderful guest, Arriel Balogun, RevOps career coach and consultant with Infinitely Elevated. We met at the RevOps AF conference in San Francisco, where she spoke on the career growth in RevOps. So, Arriel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. So happy to be here.
Tell us about yourself and your journey into RevOps.
Firstly, I wanted to say thank you, Steve, and thank you, Jay, for having me on as a guest today. Talking a little bit about my background and how I ended up in RevOps. I actually started in finance. I was in billing and accounts, and part of me was honestly tired of working very early in the morning and very late at night to reconcile what did you mean by this? What is this clause? Did you make this clause yourself? Did you run
Yeah.
this by legal? And so all of these challenges, once it came to my table, and I said, I feel a responsibility to help the sales folks to do better so that I don't become a bottleneck when we have deals to close, business to run. And so from that, it was honestly a voluntary effort where I said, I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to present myself as a trusted advisor and resource, not only to leadership in sales, but also the extended team members as well, to say, can I sit in the rooms when you are doing your business reviews, when you are thinking about how to progress certain prospective customers through opportunities, and what kind of conversations are coming up so that I can address it either early on or figure it out. So from there, the leadership said, hey, you realize you're not doing finance anymore, right? And I'm like, wait, what? And so that became a conversation of sales operations and sales enablement specifically. And I said, oh, this is interesting. I like this. And the continuation of being almost like relentlessly curious about what was breaking at the organization level really led me to figure out how I can enable more changes that will make it smoother for all of us in the process of going from prospective customer to closed one.
Excellent. Love
Yeah.
that.
So I could not attend RevOps Sample this year, but you spoke the concept of ARR, right? Anti-reactive revenue operations, like really moving from reactive to prescriptive, right? So my question is, what does that look when it comes to forecasting?
That's a really good question. So as I have evolved my own personal brand and now my business brand, I'm actually human centered first. When we think about forecasting, it's a people problem disguised as a data problem. And the
Mm.
numbers are only as good as the upstream behavior that we are promoting to get to those numbers. So when we think about that, we say, what's happening at the rep level? What are they doing to actually give you accurate forecasting numbers? What behaviors are you promoting that actually works in our favor versus not? And I always do a little storytelling here. I said, can we just figure out how we can just tweak a little bit of your process and how you do this and adding this to the system? And he looked me squarely in the face and said, I don't get paid to do that. I said, oh. Noted and fair point. And so I said this will be included in next year's design. Thinking about how to promote the right human behavior so that we can see more accurate forecasting. And then people first, that's always where I start. Is this a people problem? Is this a process problem where we can layer in technology to support the people and the processes? So that's where I think of forecasting from more of a human centered approach rather than just the data that we actually see. And can I go a little bit deeper into that too? This is one of the reasons why I came up with the anti-reactive RevOps is because we wait till after the month is closed to say, oh, we really missed it, or oh, we have to roll up our sleeves and figure out what to do now when we've had the data all along. We've seen that the close rates are declining. We see that they are missing opportunities to engage with prospective customers. We're seeing that the conversation quality really isn't what it should be. We see that the conversations aren't being reflected in the system in a systematic way or operationalized way. Then we see that all along, and we don't wait until we miss the quota or we miss the monthly mark or the quarterly mark that we have, and then say, now it's time to jump in and act. And that
Mhm.
reactive nature was always exhausting to me. And I was like,
Mm.
we can do something a little bit sooner. We can intervene a little earlier to make sure that not only the rep is successful, but the business as well.
Excellent. I love this interest
Yeah.
that the thought of a RevOps solution also involving compensation for the people process technology. It's like you get salespeople to respond to compensation behavior, change behaviors, but then that should also reflect into how they're taking action in technology.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just an interesting approach to go, okay, we'll just moderate
But
your compensation and that will drive it. That'll make big
Yes.
change.
I have a follow-up question, right? Because you said it very correctly that it's people's problem. Forecasting is really a people's problem, right? And less of data and process problem, or process and data, right? It might be in
Correct.
that priority. So my question really is, how do you handle in case you see people's problem to be the biggest problem, right? Which you may or may not be in a position to necessarily solve it just by correcting a compensation model. So what do you do in that scenario?
I actually intervene. And this
Mhm.
is part of me walking the line from finance to RevOps. The biggest thing that I wanted to share is that I literally sat with the teams that I support. So in this evolution, I had to see everyone as my customer. So that is the sales leader, their AEs, the account managers. So how do I bring CSMs or the CS org into the loop as well? Because whatever we touch in sales in terms of the processes or the technology will inevitably impact post sales as well. And so that's where I've gotten very granular and very focused to sales to post sales processes, the handoffs that are involved, and why it is important to bring more folks into the room. And so when I say I see everyone as my customer, that means I sit with you in your department and I'm just there. And
Right?
I say, I'm a fly on the wall. If you have a problem, just come right over. Tell me what's working. Tell me what's not working. Why? Why is this working? And so what I began to do is look at patterns from my different stakeholders. So if the C-suite is seeing the same challenge, but from a different perspective, noted. Sales, noted. Customer success, noted. Even products sometimes. If I'm hearing enough of the pattern, I say, how can I come up with a solution or strategy that involves people, process, technology, but covers our basis across the business? That's where we start to reduce silos. We start to think more methodically around problem solving and so that it doesn't become whack-a-mole. So thinking about it from that level or that approach to say I want everyone in the room, your voices are heard, and this is how it solves across the business is something that came very natural to me.
Okay.
Okay. So what you're effectively saying is, and it's an excellent thing actually to do, to be part of them, right? Let me be the part of the solution. Let me handle all your questions rather than saying that you're not doing your job. Because how you deal with a person is how.
To your question, Jay, like part of that is becoming that trusted advisor to everyone. So, like I said, everyone is my customer. And I took that to heart just to add a little bit more context around stakeholders and my responsibility to them all is that I gained the trust and respect from most of the organization because of my way of operating. And that turned into a way of sales reps literally sitting at my desk saying and waiting for me while I was in meetings so that I could help solve their challenges with their contracts, with the clauses, or anything else that came up in their deal or opportunity stage cycles. So that was something that was really successful to me. And I saw as a win, where I said, now people are actually coming to me for help rather than reactively saying, now I've got to deal with this.
So let me ask you about this, though. We often ask about how people bridge the gap between RevOps and the field, but you obviously starting your journey from finance. Tell me about that critical moment where you were like, okay, I've had it, or I can't seem to get anyone else to see what I'm seeing to make that step over. As you mentioned, you stepped in, you sat in the middle of them, people are coming to your desk. What was it that just was like, okay, I have to cross this bridge? What was that moment for you, or why did you decide that it was you versus some other leader that probably could have done it?
I remember this moment very vividly. I received a contract. It hadn't been signed. We're still going through the motions to make sure that we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed. This contract was 55 pages with over 200 SKUs, something like that. And it was an international client. And I started seeing that we need to have more clauses that protect ourselves as a business. And I said, this is a whopper of a contract. And I'm spending time and more time over, I think, about a 2 week period, constantly revising and
Mhm.
advising, revising contracts, advising on the best practice, advising on where to go next. And I was like, this is painful. And by this time, I'm like, if we are moving the business to more contracts like this, because we're in a new territory, we're operating internationally, my team is like absorbing things like this as well. I've got to stop it before it becomes a larger issue. And so that moment of receiving that contract, and I said, this is not something we should be spending this much time on. This is something that we can automate much better, something that we can partner with legal on. If we need to create clauses, there should be a repository of legal clauses that are pulled directly from our systems that are approved by legal, especially if it's based on specific types of SKUs. So we want to make sure we have the right clauses that match the SKUs, that
Mm.
match implementation and post sale support, whatever the case may be, that it's automatically included. So I started to think about my own Christmas list and building from there. And so this was how I was able to design CPQ in the most robust ways. This is how I was able to enable the teams a lot better and say, this is why this works this way. This is so that you don't have to remember that this clause goes with this set of SKUs, so that I am actually making your job easier. It feels hard because this is
Mhm.
new, but trust me, this is for to cover ourselves in terms of the business as well as yourself, because the last thing I want is you feel like that deal is closed won and we ring the gong or the bell, we're excited, hooray, and then we have to claw that back because it doesn't meet the standards of the business. I've seen that
Mhm.
happen and tears flow, conversations pass.
Yeah, when you see that quarterly compensation number change, definitely the
Yes, so that's part of it. And so thinking about how to mitigate risk across the business, I have to start with the teams themselves that are responsible for bringing that business in the first place.
excellent.
Something you said really stuck with us. We do or trigger, especially for the sales team. You also
Mhm.
built a 90-day playlist, really. But my question is that how do you really make a case to leadership team, which is still operating in silos, right? And go and tell them that revenue management is not fundamentally just about forecasting or helping salespeople, but it is a different way of designing that entire revenue strategy.
Yeah. So that came up a lot. And I remember I have a good story on this one too. So we were redesigning how we wanted Salesforce to flow based on where the business was at that point in time. And part of that was recognizing that customer success was consistently left out of the conversation. So we set up opportunity stages and we had all of these
Mm.
things that would either allow the rep to move forward if they had certain documentation present and checkbox, all the things. But on the post sale side of that, they're like, this is really slowing down my renewal. I don't have to go through all of these steps and stages and this and that for this renewal. And it's really catching me off guard to do this as my day-to-day job for renewals for post sales. And I started a process where we would just have bi-weekly check-ins with the CSM team to go over the renewals that were coming up that quarter. What progress
Mhm.
are you making? Where are you stuck? And so that the team can learn from each other, have that hour to learn from each other, think about best practices. You have RevOps, our whole team in here so that we can figure out solutions. We can collaborate on what works best. And I kept hearing the same thing. This renewal is going to be late. This renewal won't be closed on time. They was so out of compliance for some of the deals that we had where 60 days following the renewal date, there was still no renewal contract signed, which is very problematic for multiple reasons. But From there, I again raised my hand and said, this is a huge risk to our business if majority of the CSMs are saying that majority of their book of business will have late contracts, and that's going to bleed into the energy that they have for subsequent quarters if they're trying to catch up from the prior quarter, close what's the current quarter. It's just a lot of compounding work. And so I took it upon myself to work with the chief customer experience officer and say, I know you are looking to hire your VP, but we've got to get ahead of this now. So I created a 90-day renewal playbook for the company. And what that meant is 90 days prior to the renewal, we go through certain stages and steps from
Changes.
a post sales perspective so that we are covering our bases for those renewals to close on time, if not early, if we can. Yeah, so that was a big part of it. And so that was like more on the operator side of like how I worked. Now, as a consultant, I ask specifically, how will this improve where we are today and support where we want to be tomorrow? Because once you can feel that out or think about the future state, then that starts to take us on a path to get there. And we can buy into that a little bit easier. Say, all right, if we can close renewals on time, what else does that free the teams up to do instead of being behind the curve? You can report back to your board something that's a little bit better of a story than we're
Right.
late again.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw you kind of a pivot based on the fact that you're a career consultant and when it comes to helping RevOps individuals. So a lot of what they have to do is they're taking more and more ownership of revenue execution. They're figuring out how to untangle some roles. They're trying to drive collaboration. So with what you're seeing, both using your internal operating perspective, like this principle that you tend to live under, what are you seeing that would be the kind of guidance RevOps leaders need to be thinking about in a way to both stay relevant and begin to take on greater leadership over the sales process and the sales execution?
So that's a good one. I would say revenue execution is a highly collaborative effort. And collaboration doesn't just happen because people like each other, it happens because we have decision thresholds. Like, can we actually trust this person to make this decision on their own? Then, if not, what is the escalation path? What are our handoff protocols? And really establishing that up front so that
Right.
people know what to do instead of relying on being told what to do, but to act out of using data, using intuition in some cases, and trusting them, like from a leadership perspective, trusting them to carry it out to the best of their ability, not for just themselves, but for the business as well. And so ultimately what I like to do is how can we make sure the same question isn't answered twice, because it's a very expensive question if we have to keep reviving that question or iterating on scenarios. Think about it a little bit ahead of time so that we can drive the collaboration that we're looking for and people are not sitting back and a little resentful to say this person keeps coming back to me every single time or we keep having the same challenges. And if that means having a standard, like I've heard of the 131. If there's one challenge, you research three different solutions and then you propose the best one to your leadership or senior leadership or stakeholder team. And that's something that you can establish very early on so that people can start to build that muscle. It's like going to the gym. If you're going to the gym and you want to eventually bench press 200 pounds or more, so you're thinking
Right.
about how to step your weight up to that goal or that amount of weight. And so starting with some of the more bite-sized decisions that are out there to be made, or then once they get comfortable with that, okay, how can I add a little bit more, add another plate, add a little bit more. And so now it's the repetition, and then they're building confidence, honestly, building confidence to be able to handle small challenges, medium size, and when it's something a little bit out of their comfort zone, ask for help, get a spot, somebody to spot you. That's what collaboration means to me. And that's what I have continued out like in my career as an operator in startups and in tech, and now as a consultant on that side too, helping founders really understand how to get from their current state of collaboration to a future state and stepping them through that process, again, from the sales to post sales process in their business.
Excellent. I just think that the world of revenue management is evolving. That I was just thinking how typically sales ops sat under the VP of sales, but now you have a CRO, and now
Mhm.
you have RevOps, which sits above that because VP of sales doesn't get into the go-to-market strategy and doesn't always deal with what comes after sales, right? Just thinking through like what is a person coming from sales ops evolving into RevOps or the RevOps evolving into its own, some of the ways to be able to create the presence or be able to build the business cases and the leadership that is required to take the table stakes of the people, process, and technology. And I don't know, I just was wondering if there are any other thoughts around how you're seeing that evolve with the roles or the expectations of what the RevOps people you work with are having to deal with.
It's tough, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that one. It's a tough place to be in understanding your true strengths. So on the coaching side, so you mentioned it in my
Mhm.
intro. So I do coach RevOps as well. And so part of that is understanding where do you fall on the four pillars of RevOps? Because a lot of folks, I just talked about this yesterday, a lot of folks assume that you have to be a master of the four pillars of RevOps. So there's the insights or data, there's operations, there's the tools, and then there's enablement. It's very hard to be a master of all of those things. So it's almost like choosing where you want to focus your RevOps attention. You have more of a knack for data, and you can look at data all day long to help find patterns, to help enforce accountability or make new decisions. Can you look at a tech stack and say, you know what, this is going to break X, Y, and Z integration if we do this? Or is this really going to solve a problem? Or am I truly leaning more strategically and want to think about the operations and how we move from even marketing to sales to implementation if you have it, and then post sales and beyond, right? So how do we
Mhm.
start to think about where do you fit as RevOps? Because we can't just be all things all the time, because then you are too peanut butter spread across the business, and then there will be things that inevitably break and you'll have to go back and fix it. And part of that is understanding, do you actually need a patch job for this, or is this something that
Mm.
we need to revisit and take off of our plate if it's not serving us anymore? So really being able to think through where do you fall within RevOps, and how if you focus a lot more, have that niche, you can be so much more valuable to the company than just trying to give your best 25% across all four pillars. Like that, it won't help. So learning when to delegate, learning when to ask for help, learning when to subtract before adding, thinking about those as best practices and creating your own internal operating system so that you can flourish and you can understand what it looks like when you give your best work.
I'll tell you, a long time ago, one of my mentor had told me when I was just moving into management situation, he gave me a very similar advice where he said, you need to be a jack of all trades. You don't need to be mastering everything because
Mhm.
you cannot do everything and you cannot say that, oh, you can't do it, let me take over and do it, right? So I think RevOps role is somewhat very similar, right? Because you are going across these four pillars, navigating them, leading them really from a revenue strategy perspective. But you definitely cannot be master of everything.
Very true. It's a very hard pressure to put on yourself and almost unrealistic. What I will say is, because you have a niche or you have your chosen niche or focus areas, that doesn't mean you're absolved of understanding other ways RevOps work. So I do want to clarify that,
Yeah.
still understanding how the other pillars function. So that is definitely something I wanted to touch base on. Don't totally ignore the other pillars. Have visibility and have an opinion about the other pillars that are not quite your focus area. Still understand that.
When it comes down to it, not every business is going to want you to execute 100% in all those pillars. And when it comes down to a culture, you could be in an organization that prizes data, another one that prizes people operations, much different in the process, even though they sell the same thing. And I think when somebody's looking for work or looking to find a job that's going to fit with them culturally, you being able to communicate that this is my strength in RevOps. I can do these other things, but this is where I'm really going to be good. you'll be more likely to be successful at the environment that honors that, as opposed to the one that's, if you're all people sitting around talking to people and helping win collaboration, and they're over here, what's the data say? And you're like, I'm getting to it. And they're like, okay, you're not getting to what I want, right? It doesn't mean you're not good at your job. You're just at the wrong place that values different things. And so being able to communicate it as a individual to an organization, they can quickly see that that's how we drive our business, or I don't care about that. And you want to get deselected from that, right? You don't want that job because you're ultimately going to walk away unsatisfied on both ends, or you're going to be working in out of your skill set all the time, and that's going to be frustrating. So this idea of knowing your strengths, but also aligning it to the four pillars, then being able to communicate that, and then it helps you recognize the kind of places where you're going to thrive and you might not, or you might have more of a challenge. But then again, if you're like, I really want to learn this other pillar, maybe it's a good opportunity to kind of go get your feet wet and I really want to take on that challenge versus someplace where it's just not a good fit. And you both walk away going, this isn't what we were looking for. And it's disingenuous to both sides. The company should know it, but also the RevOps leader should know it. And I don't know, I just think that's really important information to think about with an individual.
What I call it is decision infrastructure. That one is more on like the personal side, but I also think of decision structure for businesses as well. And so in coaching folks through RevOps, it's more of giving them clarity in the language to articulate where their strengths are. I call it RevOps superpowered because we're all superheroes in what we do as operators. But what that means is understanding, okay, the pillars. You've understood. I say, where do you want to play? Because it takes some of the pressure off when you're thinking about career challenges or career growth. But where do you want to play? What's next and why? And understanding what industry and how are you going to do the appropriate storytelling? Because if we say, I want to be in tech, tech is a huge industry. So I say, break it down. Tell me about the sub technology field that you would like to be in. So thinking about it at a more granular level. And some folks are like, oh, okay. I'm like, is it education technology? Is it B2B SaaS specifically? Is it health technology? Where do you want to play? And what can I look at in terms of your pattern of where you worked before or what you liked and didn't like? And we start to cultivate that language so that our decisions are flowing directly parallel to the actions we're taking to grow their careers and creating opportunities in the ways they want to win. It's the same thing for businesses as well. Where do you want to play? Why? What territory are we going into? What makes your product, service, etc. very sticky in this field? What challenge or pain point do you truly understand that your product and service can solve? And we're going to chart that path together. We're going to strategize across people, process, technology through your sales to post sales process. Where's the revenue leakage happening? Where's it quietly leaking and dripping? You don't even know yet. I have some stories on that one. But that's what I think of when we talk about collaborations and superpower. It's honestly decision infrastructure.
So I want to really move to AI because everybody is right now really using AI, experimenting with it. A lot of experiments are working out. And RevOps are, I think, number one people and lot of posts I keep seeing, oh, I did this and this is the architecture and you do this. So my question is very simple, right? For RevOps leaders who truly want to think about modernizing their technology stack and implementing a good AI strategy, where do they start? What should be good things to really look at before they even start?
So, word to the wise, any AI that's layered onto broken processes produces just faster and more expensive chaos. So, just know that up front. Actually, I'll do both sides of the same coin. So, I'll give you more of like the operator perspective as well as what I would say as a consultant and kind of blend them together. So, the first thing I would say is understanding your brand voice. Where do we want to focus our attention and our language and how we define what the pain points are, the challenges for our ICP, things like that? How are we really defining that? And how are we communicating that broadly? So, not all companies have marketing, but you have to think about that as well in your sales to post sales process so that we are charting with the same the same brand voice, the consistency of brand voice. So you don't have a rep out there saying one thing and the product does something completely different. So understanding that. Next would be definitions. So we need to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language. A lot of times what happens is people assume that they have the same definition, or maybe they pull an experience or definition from a prior company. So I call it chaos. It's definitely chaos, but it compounds. So for me, visually, I go, we're not talking the same language, and it's going to explode into something that is more challenging for us to really get to the center of. Next is documentation. So we're not documenting things just for the sake of writing it down and throwing it away or never going back to it. We want to think about accountability, we want to think about performance so that we understand truly where our challenges are. We're speaking the same language, we have the same definition, and it's documented with those same definition and understandings across the board. Next, I will also say time. Give yourself some time with these AI projects. It is very nice to bring AI in and you test it out really fast and then roll it out even faster. But when I say time, I say definitely test it. Understand the boundaries of the AI that you have so that if I can break it in RevOps, I love breaking a tool. I love finding out when there's blind spots in certain AI and tools. But if you're not doing that to understand how the field will break this AI or where the gaps will be filled with this AI, you're just guessing, then you're not going to roll out something that can actually stick with where you are today as well as grow with you. So I think that's where a lot of times people fail, and then just don't let it be a distraction. So in my case, I look at a couple of things. So, one, I do a lot of dictation. So, I try not to type anymore. And so, if I am in a tool and it cuts me off mid thought, that's hard. Now I have to go back, think about my raw thoughts, pick up where I left off, or thinking about how that's almost disruptive to my flow if I am a sales rep or if I am post sales and I'm trying to quickly get to my next thing and I have to keep double backing on my AI because it's not serving me. It actually creates more work. I think about file attachments. So I went through an experiment once to say, how many attachments can I share in one chat before it starts to either hallucinate a little bit or cat me out or tell me something else? A 100. So I'm like, okay, that's a max. So if I understand that and I'm implementing AI, now I can create processes to say, hey, if you're going to attach things, no more than X amount, less than the cap, so that you have a buffer time to resolve or need a V2. So finding those gaps and finding those boundaries and finding where you do have quantifiable issues that you're solving and not just looking to throw it out there for the sake of doing it. And then my best one, I saved the best for last, is a fallback plan. So when inevitably messes up in some way, how will you know? Who will tell you? And I have two stories on that one. So I love that everyone is taking their approach or their first steps into AI for some folks, and whether it is startup founders or solopreneurs, doesn't matter. I'm proud. I'm proud of you for taking the first step. But here's a story I'll tell. So there is someone in my network and we met and it's like, oh, we're connected with a lot of the same individuals. Can we just meet? We've been chit chatting on direct message for a minute. Let's just talk. And then we can sort through so much more, figure out where we have parallels or overlap, how we can complement each other. Great. This person says, can you email myself and my AI bot? And my AI bot will create a calendar invite for us to meet. Great. Sounds easy, right? I emailed the bot 3 days later, still no response, no calendar invite. So I have to go back to the DM and say, hey, your bot never made a calendar invite for us. I don't think that person knew that it was breaking, but if you are sending this out, how many times are you not getting meetings? How many times are you checking as a human, or do you have AI fallback plans to say, hey, I got an email, but there's no calendar? Are you reconciling with AI in some way to make sure that the action that it's supposed to carry out actually is. And so that was one. And then I love a good email automation, but email automation with Calendly links that don't exist. It's just a gray box of nothing. Again, I can't actually click the link to book a meeting. That now requires me to go back to the email, say, hey, this is broken or not working. Who's monitoring this? In that case, I never received a response back. So I said, oh, this is just an automation where no one's really catching if there's responses coming back. So you think about just at a very basic level on scheduling meetings or calendar management. And there's a lot of AI right now around AI SDRs and replacing humans. But think about that. That's revenue leakage up front. If I'm a qualified, ideal client, you want to work with me, I click your email. So there's an open rate, but there's no conversion rate. There's no one capturing like why there's a fall off between the email open to meetings booked. No one's looking at that. So that's where I think about, again, sales to post sales processes. How can we make sure that this is working as it should? And when it doesn't, what do we then do?
We are also working with a lot of RevOps people, right? And what I've realized is that there is a lot of excitement in terms of allowing you to do a lot of stuff. Everybody has become a builder, very excited. And you can't say anything about what they have built because it is like calling their baby ugly. So you have to be very careful, right? What you thought.
Very true.
But see, what I've seen is there are three main areas of where AI really can help. One definitely is the Gen AI. Will bring insights, consolidate meetings, help me write emails. Second part is your day-to-day workflow automation. I'm doing this job, can I automate this? And it becomes easier for me, right? AI can definitely help. You require maybe an automation workflow and app that needs to be deployed. So enterprise scale level if you want to get there. And third part, I don't know, a lot of people don't understand it fully is the AI agents. They confuse between all of these three because AI agent is something that I want to, as an organization, build and roll out to the community. Right? Like I build an HR agent. But again, application which has objectives to meet, which has tool set its proposals, and then it has instructions of what to do and what not to do. Right? So if you want to roll out something, for example, in RevOps, if you want to roll out saying that how do we really negotiate pricing with our customers, you can actually write a very nice agent, look at all your deals, look what happens, look at industries, and then it can very intellectually answer that in your situation, this is the right way to negotiate. It is not a static script, but it is AI-led advice. Try and do this. So those, in my opinion, are very good ways of looking at how AI can do. But you are absolutely right. If your base is not solid and you start doing this AI, it's going to only amplify the mess, right?
Yes. And I was on a roundtable months ago just around the automation around AI and hearing how other sectors are starting to really pull in automation and bots and things like that to help accelerate deal reviews, things like that. In this case, it was from the finance team. So that's why it really was close to home for me because I started in finance. It still has my heart. So I always think about that as well. But in this case, the AI bot decided to skip a step and it auto approved a deal that almost crippled the entire business. So it did a finance approval, six-figure deal that nearly crippled this business. It just blatantly
Wow.
skipped the steps. So you can still have instructions, but AI will do its own thing sometimes. And like I said, having that fallback plan or having ways to double check or even go back into your bot and say, it's time for an upgrade. My bots get time for an upgrade as I see fit. Or if I'm using one bot more than another one, then how do I say, all right, I think I've extended this use case for where I was with this bot. Let's enhance where you're at now or where I am with my business and where I'm supporting clients so that it can be even better. So I think having that routine like check or approach to everything that we do is part of that process as well. So when you think about RevOps in our tech stack and you're regularly going in, are your users logging in? How long are they there? What challenges are we solving for? What are the KPIs that we're measuring ourselves against? You need to do the same thing with AI. Is it still serving the business? Are you logging where it's not, where there was something that was completely egregious, wrong, etc., and actively or proactively going back in to say, how can I ensure that this doesn't happen again? Or if it does, how are we as humans flagged to make sure that we catch it before there's an issue of a higher level or more expensive issue that can come out of some of this AI chaos? So that's what I wanted to share on that point
Mm.
too. Like regularly go in and check your bots. Go in and make sure that it's still serving the humans that actually need it to function well.
You do QBRs with your clients, you do management meetings with your people. Why not also do some sort of review with the quality of the AI you've generated? Has there been a change? Data moved? There's always a human in the loop. So, Ari, I think you've definitely demonstrated that in our talk today about the value of the human in the loop. And so, thank you so much for giving us your insights and sharing all of your wonderful thoughts with us. I just really appreciate that you've given us the time, and we're excited that everyone else gets a chance to see it. And so, if you, as a subscriber, thank you so much. We really encourage you to like and subscribe, make some comments on our YouTube page or anywhere you're listening or watching this podcast. We'd love to get the word out about the evolution of revenue management and revenue operations. So, thank you again, Ariel. Have a great experience in your near future with AI.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, Jay. So happy to be here, and I hope to be on again soon.